Welcome to Shooting Straight with Brad and KC. Obviously, I'm not KC this month, and we have Brad Carlyon, the county attorney, with us. And I'm David Clouse, Deputy Chief with the Navajo County Sheriff's Office, filling in for KC. So this month's guest, we have Steve Julian, who's with Navajo County and serves as the Criminal Justice Coordinator. Steve, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Steve, tell us a little bit about who you are and your position with Navajo County.
Sure. I've been up here for 32 years, living in between Show Low and the Pine Top Lakeside area. I've been a police officer here in Navajo County, a school teacher, and a probation officer. Just retired last year after 32 years of service. And now I'm working as a criminal justice coordinator in Navajo County. This is a new position for the county, and I'm happy to serve in this position for the past year, and just got renewed. Our grant was renewed for one more year.
So what is a criminal justice coordinator, and what do you do?
Sure. Navajo County does have a criminal justice coordinating council, and I've been hired, like I say, about a year ago to support the council and to coordinate their directions and provide the services that they wish. Everything that I'm doing is directed basically on the National Stepping Up Initiative and what their goals are by the initiative. And I do activities, everything that the National Stepping Up Initiative is asking for us to do regarding trying to reduce the amount of people with mental illness in our jails.
Okay. I'm going to take you back for
Sure.
a second. First, what is the Navajo County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, if I got that right?
You did. That's a lot of words.
What is it exactly, and who's a part of it?
Sure. Well, yourself, Brad, you're part of the council. Our judges are part of the council. The public defenders, everyone in Navajo County, including the sheriff, Casey Clark, are part of the council. Anybody that's involved in justice in Navajo County is part of the council. We also have citizen members as well, people from the faith-based community and other citizens that are part of the council together.
And what is the purpose of a coordinating council? And is this unique to Navajo County, or is this actually kind of common?
Well, it's become more common more recently as more councils are developed throughout the state. But again, most of the councils have been developed with the purpose of promoting the goals of the Stepping Up Initiative and everything that we can do to try to lower recidivism rates in our state, especially for the population of people that we have in our jails with that are suffering from mental illness.
So you said something about stepping up.
Sure.
Stepping Up Initiative?
Yes.
What's that?
Okay. Well, too, let me give you some examples of what's within the Stepping Up Initiative, and then I can tell you what we're doing in each one of those aspects of the initiative. For instance, the first thing we want to do is try to reduce the number of people that are going into our jails with mental illness right from the get-go, if we can slow that down. And what's been recognized by the National Association of Counties and also the Stepping Up Initiative is that we need to try to educate police officers first with recognizing people with mental illness. And there's certain ways that we're doing that. The first thing that's being promoted is training officers in what we call mental health first aid. We'd like to train 100% of the officers in Navajo County in mental health first aid to get them to recognize people with mental illness and understand from their perspective what they're going through, and helping officers not only recognize that but maybe diffuse any situations they may have with people with mental illness.
Are we providing this training to our local law enforcement?
Thank you for asking. We have had very few officers trained in mental health first aid yet. However, just last month, the NARBA Institute, Northern Arizona Behavioral Health Association or Administration, was willing to fund the training for our first law enforcement officer to go to the mental health first aid instructor course. That instructor course was over in San Diego. The training is costly. It was $2,000 for the tuition, and NARBA funded that for us. So we now have our first instructor right here in Show Low, actually, that's trained to do that instruction for police officers. They went to a specific course that was for police officers. And I'm hoping that within the next month or so, we'll have some of the first officers being trained in mental health first aid here in Navajo County.
So what will these officers learn to do with this mental health first aid?
Well, and let me expand into CIT as well, which is another part of that. But,
CIT?
Crisis Intervention Team Training.
Okay.
Mental Health First Aid is an 8-hour training course, and it's a snapshot of everything that officers may see in the field, everything from developmental disabilities to people who are suffering from PTSD, alcoholism, you name it. It runs the gamut of different things that officers may see in the field, and helps them recognize those things and how to be perhaps acting in a more empathetic manner towards these people that are suffering from mental illness. And then as we get into CIT training, which is a national program as well, Crisis Intervention Team Training, this is a 40-hour training course. We've actually just had our first Crisis Intervention Team Training back in May. Myself and ChangePoint Integrated Health got together, and we were able to organize and put on a CIT training course for law enforcement in Navajo County. We had 16 officers and dispatchers attend that course. And that training, of course, is far more in depth. A lot of behavioral health instruction on what you'll see, people that are suffering from a broad spectrum of autistic behaviors, how police officers can interact with them in a positive way, how those interactions, if they're going poorly, can be diffused or de-escalated, so it's safe for both the person and the officer both. And also, we had a lot of care providers, treatment providers, people in the community that have availability of housing for these people if they happen to be homeless, and it gives the officers more understanding of where they could take people, where they could recommend people to go for care and treatment within our county.
So you said you got your start in law enforcement or the criminal justice
Yes,
field 32 years ago.
it was quite a while ago, yes.
Have you seen a big change from when you first started as a police officer, is that correct?
Yes.
Till what you're working on now today?
Right, I hate to say how long ago, but it was 1985 when I first went through a police academy. And I remember it quite well. I don't remember there really being any instruction whatsoever in interaction with people perhaps with developmental disabilities or mental health concerns. I don't remember any kind of training on that. Also, just to let you know, that's advanced quite a bit to the point that now, starting in January, our law enforcement training center here locally in Taylor is going to be having a full mental health first aid training course as part of their curriculum. It's the 8-hour course will be taught in the academy as part of that. I never remember any of that kind of.
Yeah. So law enforcement and the criminal justice as a whole is making large steps to help train these officers rather than just say, hey, just deal with it.
Right.
But give them some more resources and training as to how to best handle these individuals they may come across that have mental challenges and the best avenue for that.
Right.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, before they didn't have that ability and they just kind of
Right. Well.
incarcerate them or.
Right. A lot of this training by giving the officers alternatives to detention or arresting someone necessarily if they figure that they're suffering from some kind of mental illness or developmental disability. If this person has not been connected to services before, the officers can learn how to do that or can offer suggestions or even transport, in many cases, get these people to the care they need, whether it's, I don't know if you're aware, but in ChangePoint Integrated Health, our local treatment provider now has a crisis stabilization unit in Show Low. And that's a new thing within the past year in our county as well. And having officers having that opportunity to take someone there, for instance, that's in a mental health crisis instead of to jail is obviously what we want. Not necessarily, we don't want to take them to the jail, we don't want to take them to the emergency room if we don't have to. So ChangePoint's giving us another opportunity. And we want the officers to be aware of what all the resources are around them so they can take advantage of that.
How much time is it going to take these officers to become our contact resources and deal with this one person and not be available to deal with something else?
That's a good question. For instance, we have a local provider, CBI, in Winslow and the Holbrook area, and they've guaranteed officers that if an individual is taken to their facility, they'll have the officer taking them there and turning them around and getting the officer to sit back out in the field within 5 minutes. So they're trying to really decrease the amount of time that an officer has to spend with somebody that might be suffering from substance abuse, alcoholism, or whatever. There are, of course, it's going to take a longer period of time to get somebody to Sholo. And depending on the time of day and so on, some of these contacts can be, that officers have, as long as the police officer can get the person to a change point facility, for instance, they will do the transport as soon as they can to the Sholo crisis stabilization unit to be of assistance.
How does that compare to how long it takes to book somebody into jail?
Oh, yeah.
If they can have somebody in 5 minutes, you know, it's oftentimes with travel time to Holbrook or to Sholo, wherever your nearest detention facility is, plus the booking process, you can spend upwards to an hour and a half in incarcerating or booking in one person.
And not just travel time, but the paperwork necessary
The
for the booking.
paperwork and the pre-evaluation questionnaires and different things like that.
So it sounds like this program could actually free more time up for the officers to be on patrol, but it also sounds like we're partnering with both CBI, which is Community Bridges, and with Change Point, and getting them much more involved, or actually they may have already been involved with these individuals, but bringing them into the picture at the time of a crisis.
Exactly, and the officers have also learned that there's a kind of a hierarchy of service within the behavioral health treatment facilities. Our Regional Behavioral Health Authority over in Flagstaff has a law enforcement liaison person, and the officers had a course of instruction as part of the CIT where they got to meet this person individually and learn what she can do for them. Our liaison can talk directly to the officers in the field if need be, or the next day they can try to inform the officer if this person's ever been part of the behavioral health system or not. And can actually work with the local treatment provider to try to connect this person to services. And again, getting back to the National Stepping Up Initiative, we're trying to reduce the amount of people coming to our jails in the first place that have mental illness. We're trying to shorten their length of stay in jail if we can. And then also we're trying to connect them to services. If we can connect them to services before they even get to the jail, great. If they're in jail already, we now have our first Navajo County reentry coordinator.
What is a reentry coordinator?
Thank you. We have we received a grant from Health Choice Integrated Care, which again is our Regional Behavioral Health Authority over in Flagstaff. They gave us a grant, Navajo County a grant, to hire our first reentry coordinator. And this is somebody that's working in the jail with inmates that are about to be released. And they're starting even before that. They're meeting the inmates to do the public safety assessment on the inmates, getting to know what their risk is to the community and what kind of situation they just came from, or what kind of services they may need upon their release back into the community. And we're trying to help inmates be more connected once they leave the jail. We want to connect them to services as quickly as possible. The inmate reentry coordinator can try to set up appointments with them, with our local behavioral health specialists or treatment providers. They can try to arrange housing for them. They may even be able to contact family members for them, trying to reach out into the community and get them connected to whatever services they may need. What the research seems to indicate is the sooner we can connect someone to services after they've left our jail, the chances are far greater that they're going to stay connected. If we let them go a few days, if we let them just walk down the street, we might lose them. Chances are we will lose them.
So we're making sure our inmates who are being released with mental health issues get back into treatment.
Back into treatment or treatment initiated for the first time, whatever it may be. Right.
David, are people in your jail with mental health issues a big cost to you?
Yeah, when we were sitting here talking about that, that's something that kind of struck my mind was the cost savings that we'll see through this, not only in your office, but in the sheriff's office as well, because they take a special, what we call our special housing unit, where an officer has to keep closer eye on them, or a detention officer has to do more frequent checks, and plus the cost of health care inside the jail or the nursing staff to treat those inmates. And if we're not having that cycle of being released, reoffending, then arresting them on a minor offense, and then bringing them back, we could see a lot of cost savings, not to our office, but probably to the entire county.
And it actually sounds like it would be beneficial to the community, because if they're receiving the proper treatment on their proper meds, they're not as likely to be causing havoc and mayhem within their communities.
Right. I mean, it's going to be better for everyone all the way around. And again, not only the cost savings, but as I mentioned with the CIT training and the mental health first aid training, there's a safety factor as well. A safety for the citizen that's experiencing mental illness, and then also for the officers. If the officers can recognize and de-escalate situations with the mentally ill, better for everyone.
I recently talked to some of our deputies that attended your CIT training.
Yes.
And response to suicidal subjects is probably a big case or a scenario that
Yes.
that is most common, and we see a lot of changing into how we respond to those individuals.
Yes.
What is it that they need most? Do they need to be taken to jail, or do they need evaluation and help? And we're also, some of the old thought and theories were just to take them to the emergency room. So you also have law enforcement tied up, you have the criminal justice, and you have the emergency rooms being tied up with that type of care or treatment. Now we're finding, we're training our officers and our deputies throughout the county with more resources of better options than just going to the emergency room.
Right, and let me just expand a little bit on the actual courses that were taught at CIT. Jason Moore from the County Attorney's Office did a rather lengthy instruction to the officers on how to prepare Title 36.
What is it, Title 36?
This is a evaluation or a report that's prepared to try to get this person committed for a limited amount of time for psychological evaluation, because they're either a harm to themselves or others. And there's actually more criteria than that. That's a simplified view of it. But Jason took a lot of time to instruct the officers on how they can do that themselves if need be. And then Chief Scarber from the Snowflake Taylor Police Department also taught a class on case law relating to mental illness, or the police officers dealing with people with mental illness, and how they need to really slow down, evaluate the situation, take their time to make it safer for everyone, and if at all possible, not have to barge through the door right away. Let's try to stand back, see if we can get the person on the phone with some behavioral health treatment person to talk them down, help them, do what we can to make it have a better outcome.
So are we going to be able to track data of some kind to see if this CIT and other programs are being cost effective in particular, but not only cost effective, but actually beneficial to those in our community that suffer from mental illness?
Well, hopefully in time we will be able to evaluate the amount of people that we have in jail that are suffering from mental illness. Our hope would be that those numbers would eventually come down. Do we have rock solid numbers on who is diagnosed with some kind of mental illness inside of our jails or something? Do we have that kind of data right now? No, we don't. Not that I'm aware of, nothing that would be specific numbers. I'm hoping that the amount of contacts that our reentry coordinator can make into the community for persons leaving our jail will definitely be documented. That's being documented as we speak. Any contacts that our reentry coordinator is making, connections to counseling services, housing providers, anyone in the community, even a faith-based, a church member, a priest or something like that, any connection that's being made is being documented. And we should be able to track at that point, after we get this going, over a longer period of time, how many of those people have come back to see us again. And we can compare that to past recidivism rates. So Is the data there now? No, but I'm hoping we can work on that and get data to really show where we're at. It's
This
going to take some time.
crisis center that you talked about, a change point,
Yes.
putting it together in, I think it's Sholo area.
Correct.
What exactly is that? What does it do? And do you have to be brought in by law enforcement to take advantage of that facility?
Well, I'll speak to that a little bit based on what I know, but I don't want to go into that in depth on that too much. It's Change Point's facility, but I do know it's a 23-hour facility.
What do you mean by 23 hours?
People can be there for 23 hours, and then after that, unless there is a further connection made, they will generally leave after 23 hours unless they volunteer to stay longer, or there's a connection made for that person to go to a higher level of care. Law enforcement, as you said, do bring people to the crisis stabilization unit. That's correct, but anyone can go there. If someone could could walk in on their own and experiencing a crisis, or
Or a family member?
family
take
member
them?
could bring them, absolutely. Same with the Title 36 that I mentioned. Family members can begin that kind of paperwork and request for evaluation, just like a law enforcement officer can. But yes, family members, anyone. The crisis stabilization unit will, if there's a call in to them also, they will speak to people over the phone. And not only Change Point handling this kind of thing, but I'm not sure if I mentioned already as well, but in Northern Arizona, we have a crisis response network. We have a telephone service that is provided by the Regional Behavioral Health Authority that officers can call on the street, that citizens can call, that a person can call themselves if they need counseling immediately over the telephone. And this kind of service was unknown to most of the police officers until we started the CIT training and actually brought the people up from Crisis Response Network to talk to the officers about what these services are and how they can help them out in the field. They'll talk to not only the officer and brainstorm ideas on how to deal with someone. The officer can take the phone and hand it to the person if they wish, and they can get direct services immediately to try to maybe diffuse a situation or de-escalate something.
I see, having worked in law enforcement for these years, we see so many people that they come to a point they don't know what to do, so they just call their local police department or sheriff's
Right.
office. It's very encouraging to see some new resources and options, not only for family, but also for law enforcement and the public officers and officials themselves to
Yes.
reach out to new people.
So law enforcement's been doing these type of social services for a long time then.
Yeah.
And now you have more tools and not everything looks like a nail, so you got to use a hammer. You have more tools besides a hammer in your toolbox now, I assume.
Yeah, and that's kind of going back to what Steve, you were talking about, the first aid or mental
Health first aid?
mental health first aid. It's kind of a first responders
Yes.
diagnosis or look at, I guess diagnosis might be the wrong word, but gives them an opportunity to look and observations to say which direction do I need to take this this case or this individual versus just like your analogy going for the hammer.
So we're looking at helping these people before they go to jail.
Yes.
Those who have been unfortunate and go to jail, we're trying to help them on the day that they're released from jail.
Correct.
What else are we trying to do to help these people with mental illness that get in contact with the criminal justice system?
Well, there's certainly other counties have already moved ahead with what I would call mental health courts or wellness type of courts. Something else that I'm hoping we can initiate in Navajo County as well is a wellness court where we have a judge specifically assigned in dealing with people that are in our criminal justice system with mental illness. They're suffering from some sort of mental illness. And that way these people could have part of their release conditions perhaps, or a diversion program that could specifically address their needs. And perhaps shorten their length of stay in jail and give them the option of trying to get out, get connected to services, use their medications appropriately, and seek the proper help.
We've talked on Shooting Straight about some of our other specialty courts, specifically drug court and the Veterans Court.
Yes.
How is a mental health or behavioral health court similar or different from those other two type of specialty courts?
Well, drug court, for instance, they can be very similar or dissimilar. I've seen different ways that they can be run. Excuse me. I can give an example of a court I recently visited, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council in Mojave County, and was able to speak with a justice of the peace there in that county that's running what they're calling a well-being court. He's trying to intercept as many cases of people with mental illness that are entering into the justice system, trying to intercept those people as soon as he can and getting them into his court. He doesn't have any kind of supervision or probation type of trail or anything on these people that he's seeing, but he tries to meet with them once a month and has our treatment providers in the courtroom on the hearing dates so that they can be there to explain how the patient is doing, whether they're using medications that have been given to them, how they're going along with their counseling services. And he tries to start a dialogue with them and learn about how their housing situation is going, their employment and so on. Everything that can be done to try to intercept these people early so we're not having them spending even more time in our criminal justice system and visiting us over and over again.
Well, thanks, Steve, for joining us.
Oh, sure. My pleasure.
This is very encouraging, and
Thank you.
glad that we're having this conversation. These are things that are really needed for our officers and deputies across the county. So thank you for joining us this week at Shooting Straight. Stay tuned for our Most Wanted.
The Navajo County Sheriff's Office is currently seeking the location of Spencer McNeil Peterson. Spencer is wanted on a Navajo County warrant for original charges of aggravated assault and misconduct with weapons. Spencer has been evading contact from law enforcement for the past several months and has not been able to be located in the Show Low area. Spencer should be considered dangerous and a fugitive from law enforcement. If anybody has any information about the location of Spencer Peterson, we encourage you to contact the Navajo County Sheriff's Office at 928-524-4050 or WeTip at 1-800-78-CRIME. A reward may be offered.